From haunted houses to cursed artifacts, from whispers in the dark to battles you'll never read in scripture. This is the Unholy Podcast, hosted by Owen, author, investigator, and survivor of one of the most harrowing real-life hauntings ever documented. Each week, Doug pulls back the veil between this world and the next, sharing stories that aren't fiction, because he lived them. Prepare yourself. The silence is over.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Unholy Podcast. I'm your host, Doug Owen, author, paranormal investigator, and founder of Authentic Haunted Paranormal. Tonight, we step once again into the unknown, into the shadows, into the unanswered questions that continue pulling investigators deep into places most people would never willingly go. My guest tonight is paranormal investigator Erin Hale, and tonight we're talking investigations, evidence, private hauntings, fear, skepticism, unexplained experiences, and the realities behind paranormal research. Erin, welcome to the Unholy Podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
It's great to have you here tonight. So I always like to start at the beginning because every investigator has a story. Nobody just randomly decides to start wandering through reportedly haunted places in the dark. And something usually sparks it. So for listeners meeting you for the first time, who is Erin Hale?
Well, the paranormal got me interested all when I was 3 years old.
Wow.
So it was when that was my first memory in life, and that was my first paranormal experience at 3 years old. There was a woman that would come into the bedroom every night, and she would rub my shoulders until I would crawl under my bed because I thought it was my mother. I didn't have a nightlight back then.
Wow.
So I thought it was my mom. She would torture my sister. She didn't like my brother because he was a male. She didn't pay attention to my father. Would terrify my mother, but she loved me. And I called her mom for 3 years. Every night she'd come into my room. And so I was that strange kid that slept under her bed. So so that's how it kind of started. And then I realized, growing up, it wasn't something that you talked about. It wasn't something that was widely accepted. So I didn't want to be, at that time, I didn't want to be the weird kid. You know, I was weird enough as it was. I didn't need to add that on top of it. So I didn't really talk to many people about it. And then throughout life, I kind of just closed that part of me off until I kept hearing my name one night. And I was 24, 25 years old. Okay. And I kept hearing my name over and over. And so one night I decided I'm going to answer. And I said, because it was like, hey, who's Erin? Who's Erin? Who's Erin? Who's Erin? And I said, I'm Erin. And all the pots and pans in the kitchen started rattling, and it terrified me. And then I ended up moving into another house that was haunted. And so, haunted houses have just been in my life. So when I found out that you could go on a paranormal investigation, like the ones that you watch on TV, because I thought that was impossible. I didn't think somebody like me could investigate. But when I was able to do that, it just opened up a whole new world for me, and connections with people and places, and it just really kind of kickstarted it. And that was almost 20 years ago.
Wow. So was that the point that you decided, that's it, I'm going to become a paranormal investigator?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, and I am what I like to call a lifer in the paranormal. This is something that's going to be a part of my life for the rest of my life. It doesn't matter if it's popular, if it has a popular consensus out in the public. I don't care. That part of me is gone. I don't care what other people think. So I am forever going to be a paranormal investigator.
Nice. What was the defining event, or what made you decide that this was actually something worth pursuing seriously?
Well, I started when I went to South Pittsburgh Hospital. It was the second paranormal investigation I had ever been on, and it was through a company, and that company hired me on the spot. The owner of the company was there. He really liked the way I investigated, and he said, "Do you want to work for me?" And I was like, "Well, I've got 2 little kids and a husband, and I just don't have that kind of time." And he convinced me. So I started working for the company, and then I realized at that moment, watching it on television really wasn't an option anymore. Like, I wanted to be in the trenches. I wanted to be in these locations. And then being able to go to these specific locations and be able to see behind closed doors, because sometimes when you're working with an event company, you're able to go see more than the average bear.
Right.
So you have, and that really, I'm a history. I can't remember dates. I can't call myself a history buff because dates, I just can't retain those things. Okay. But as far as the information and just the history, just being able to stand where history was, or where something significantly big happened, is just, I don't know, it's addictive. Mm-hmm. And so from that moment on, I just knew without question.
So when you first started investigating, what surprised you the most about the paranormal field?
Positive or negative?
Well, let's take both. Let's start with the positive.
Okay, positive. The challenges with how you have to think outside the box. So when you're investigating, you have to think outside the box, and you have to, sorry, my dog is rooting on me around here. Sorry about that.
Completely good. No.
But so just having to think outside the box. Like, if you're at a prison, you're not going to act the same way as if you're at a mental hospital. You're going to approach things differently. So you have to think of different questions. So I really like the way that it worked my brain. That's a really positive thing for me. The negative? Well, also the positive is actually coming into contact with the dead. Like, being right there, being able to feel them, being able to smell them, or whatever signs they want to give you that you can retain, that are tangible to you. That was addictive. Okay. That's always been. So that's a positive for me. The negative is drama. I don't do drama. I don't like he said, she said. I don't play into that stuff. So that was kind of a big turnoff for me as far as the negatives go. But that's really all that I have negative about the paranormal, is that, like, there's certain circles that treat it like it's high school still.
I got you.
And I think we're all collectively, the paranormal field is so small still, and it's still kind of an underbelly society, that I feel that if we work together to bridge that gap of communication, and everybody just puts their egos to the side, it's going to be much easier for us all to collectively find as close to an answer as we can get. Because I don't think we're ever going to truly understand until we're on the other side. But
right. So
it makes all of us. Yeah.
Exactly. And I haven't encountered any drama myself, thank goodness, but I steer clear of that. But so what was the biggest misconception that you personally had early on when you started investigating?
What you see on TV is not like it is in reality. Right? Because, you watch these shows and they're 45 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, even YouTube shows, it's over sensationalized. It's big and everything's, oh no. And that's not how it goes, because there's so many moments that are, for lack of a better word, very dead, very still, very quiet. So you have to come up with your own form of entertainment to kind of kick up the energy a little bit. So, I learned that with my team, we laugh a lot, and and our thing is, spirits are dead. They're not boring.
Right.
You know what I mean? And what is death anyway? I mean, they're just not in the flesh and blood. So that was the biggest misconception. So the first few investigations, it kind of threw me off a little bit, because there was like I said, for lack of better words, dead time. So it was very strange. But once I acclimated to that, and I realized that these people on TV, they film shows, they're on site for 4 or 5 days. They just wear the same clothes every day to make it look like it's one day. After that, I mean, it was like ripping the Band-Aid off, and I don't know, because there's been investigations that I've been at that have been nonstop action.
Right.
But it's hard to translate that onto film. It's hard to translate without the over-sensationalizing of it.
Absolutely. I recently acquired 6 hours of footage that I had to go through for one EMF meter spike, So, I mean, it takes a lot, and that
exactly.
is a huge misconception that, and many times you're not going to find anything. But, sometimes you do.
Yeah.
So,
and this is the trouble. This is like the trouble with paranormal, because when you first get into it, at least in my experience, when I first got into it, every single second was recorded. Every single second was on film, was on audio recording. Right. I would painstakingly go through every single moment, like I was reliving it 100 times over. And then I went through this phase to where I'm just going to live in the moment, and I don't care about any kind of evidence. This is because I know it's real. Right. So I'm in it for me. And then you just kind of, you wax and wane, and you find your footing, and at least I did. And I went through this whole phase of like, why am I even doing this? What's the point? I'm spending my own hard-earned money, my time off from work. Why am I doing this? But I just keep doing it because it's just in my veins now. I can't, because I planned on not going, right? So Audra, one of my teammates, and I were always like, well, we're going to take November off. We'll take these few months off. We'll do one thing a month. And it ends up being 3 things a month, no time off, right. Exhausting all of my vacation time for paranormal because I'm a lifer.
No, absolutely. Fair enough. So now let's talk investigations. What types of locations have stood out most in your experience?
In my experience, hospitals and prisons. Those 2 places are steeped in the paranormal. I mean, they like every inch of those places, because with prisons, I mean, that's a no-brainer. There's so much activity going on all the time when it's an active prison. Mm-hmm. So imagine when it's not,
Right.
There's spirits walking around, and it's just the spirits, so you can't blame it on Joe Blow in cell 2, and then hospitals, because all of the emotions that go into hospitals, and each hospital I've been in has been a little different from the next, but there's so much emotion in hospitals between life and death and everything in between it. So those 2 places to me really stand out far above anything else.
Okay. Do private homes affect you differently than, say, public haunted locations?
Yeah, we do private investigations for homeowners who feel that they have a haunting, and those are a little different because sometimes you don't know what you're walking into, at least in a haunted location that is bigger and more commercialized. You know what you're walking into. There's pictures, there's other people's stories, you can look stuff up on Facebook, on Google, With the private home investigations, those are different because you have to approach them with a certain type of couthness, because you're dealing with somebody's personal life. And so you have to be careful because they truly believe it's haunted.
Sure.
So when you're coming at it, you can't be like, well, no, because you have an old house and it's old electrical and it's, setting off the K2 meters, and you have to approach it a little bit more gently, and a little more cautious at how you say things and what you say, because you also don't want to go in and blow the top off of the place and then leave and then make spirits mad because people live there. That's their actual life.
Right. So in private homes, okay, so let's set aside prisons, let's set aside hospitals. What other, would you say, environments seem to generate the most compelling activity?
Besides hospitals and prisons,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's a really tough question. That is a really tough question. I would say this is kind of a strange thing. Battlefields are really good.
Okay.
Outdoor investigations are really interesting. If you go near a battlefield, there's so much anxiety and fear and pride that goes into that it's just palpable in the air. Up in Pennsylvania at the Balladaria Inn? Yeah, it's near Gettysburg. I think it's near Gettysburg, or in Gettysburg. But the Balladaria Inn is a place that is an Airbnb.
Okay.
And I was sitting on the couch by the fireplace, and there was another person across from me. And I look up, and it was very, very late. Had to go to bed. Had to go home the next day, all the way down to Tennessee. It was going to be a long drive. So I said, I'm going to go to bed, I think. And I looked up, and there were soldiers from the Civil War that were starting to flock us. They were starting to surround us because my face went stark white. The other person's face went stark white. And I said, "What are you seeing?" And he said, "There's people standing on the stairway behind you, and they're in uniform." And I was like, "I'm looking at the same thing. It is definitely time for me to go to bed."
Wow.
Because they were watching us. They were just observing us, seeing what we were doing, things like that. So, battlegrounds or like Civil War houses that were turned into other places, like living quarters that were turned into military quarters.
Okay.
That's really impressive. And if anybody listening has not been to something like that, you need to go. And there was another one at Lake Shawnee, which is a campground. There's Native Americans that are buried there.
Okay.
There's an actual burial plot. I mean, they unearthed it by accident. They didn't mean to. They didn't know what they had run into, and they're digging up, and all of a sudden there's these bones, and they thought, we need to get out. So they got archaeologists involved. The whole town became involved. There were children's deaths that happened because there used to be like a little amusement park. That was a really good investigation too. The outside things are really cool. It gives you a whole different perspective that spirits are everywhere. You could be at Walmart. There's going to be a spirit in Walmart, I guarantee you, because it's not necessarily the building, it's the property.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So when a new case comes in, what is the very first thing that you do?
As far as like a private investigation?
Private investigation. Somebody calls you, says, "Look, my toaster's talking to me, and the refrigerator tried to kill me." Yeah. Well, what is your first?
The toaster.
What is your
the devil on the toaster.
Right.
So we ask things that are kind of uncomfortable. So we have to find out, are you on any kind of medication that might be counteracting? Are you drinking while you're on medication? So we have to ask these hard questions. But we come across not as nosy, it's caring. It comes from a place of caring. We're just trying to deduce all possibilities. And then we get the background. How long have you been there? Did this happen before you lived there? And is the same activity happening in this place that from the former place you lived in? Are there any ashes of any family members nearby? Do you have any haunted objects? Because there are a lot of people that have haunted objects. And then they call and say, "Oh my God, my place is haunted." Well, yes, you bought something that was haunted, knowing it was haunted. So of course, but we ask tough questions beforehand because when you go into these places, not only is it, you have to be cautious about the people, you have to be cautious about yourself because you're going into a perfect stranger's house.
Right.
So you need to make sure you have a well laid out plan and to include an exit plan just in case.
Absolutely. So how important are witnesses, their interviews, basically witness interviews, how important are they in your process? Seeing somebody who had an eyewitness to an event.
That is very important for collaboration stories. Although, once again, if it's a house investigation and a private investigation at somebody's place of residence, and let's say it's a husband and wife, and they could be feeding off of each other, and that's not to say they're lying at all. It could just be that their emotions are feeding off of each other. So you do have to approach that cautiously, but it does help, especially if the witnesses say something a little different than the eyewitness, the person actually seeing it, or somebody, if they were in conjunction, they were together in a room, and something flew off the wall, and then two people see it. Well, yes, that's a good thing, instead of it just being one person's story. So that it can add validity to the claims,
sure.
But it can also, you just have to use your discernment as to the situation. So you have to approach each situation on its own. So you can't really gauge this situation by the last situation, because that was a totally different person, totally different property, totally different situation. So discernment is a very important thing to use in the paranormal.
Yeah, absolutely. So how much historical research do you do before entering a location?
Well, if it's just my team going into a haunted location that's widely known, I personally don't like getting too much information. I really don't like getting the haunted claims. So if we're going, let's say, I'll use South Pittsburgh Hospital. That's one of my favorite places on earth to investigate.
Okay.
And so if I go in, let's say hypothetically I'm going into South Pittsburgh for the first time ever, I don't want to hear other people's haunted claims, because I don't want that tainting my mind and giving me false expectations of what may or may not happen to me.
Right.
So I like to go in. Now, as far as history, the dates, like I said, I'm terrible at retaining dates. I'm lucky I remember my own birthday. But the dates of when it opened, things of that nature, things that happen, like legitimately happened there, that is important to find out. But as far as the hauntings, I don't have any interest in any hauntings before my investigation, simply because I don't want it to overtake my imagination. I like to go in like it's my first investigation. I like to go in just with a free mind, just a clear mind as to what's going to happen. Like it's my first investigation ever. Because, truth be told, when you're going into these investigations, you become jaded after a while. So I like to use the cat ball as an example. Mm-hmm. So the first time anybody has ever used a cat ball, the first time that cat ball went off, it was like, holy smokes, can you believe that just happened? I can't believe that just happened. And then over time, you go, oh, that's really cool. Can you do that again?
Right.
And so it loses that edge to it. So I don't ever want that happening to me. I want to go in with every investigation like it's my first and my last. So that's really important to me.
I got you. So how much time do you spend ruling out normal explanations before you consider a location to be paranormally haunted? A lot? Okay.
A lot. Yeah, I'll give you a good example. We went to Octagon Hall, and we were in the basement of Octagon Hall, and there's some windows. It's like the basement of Octagon Hall, like 80% of it is underground in the basement. Mm-hmm. The rest of it is above ground, and there's windows. So the windows are just, small little windows. But we were in an area where there was no light at all, and we kept seeing this fraction of this light show up, and we thought, okay, hold on. It's happened more than twice. So that right there leads me to believe something's going on. The whole team, it took us 45 minutes. But we figured out that it was a light coming from a headlight down the road, and it was like bouncing off of 3 or 4 different things before it was where we saw it.
Okay.
And it took us 45 minutes, but at least that way we knew we weren't putting evidence out there that was evidence, like it was false evidence. It was one of those things that the Tennessee Shadow Chasers, which is the team I'm a part of, if we put evidence out there and we are unsure of what it is because we tried to debunk it and we still can't, there's still no logical reason, but it's not quite like this is paranormal. We'll put it out there for other people's opinions because we value other people's opinions.
That's interesting. And yeah. You mentioned the Octagon Hall. Are you familiar with Kent Wilson? Do you know him?
Yes.
Okay. And have you ever been on an investigation with him?
I have not. He came to the Euroshrine twice, which we used to head up the Ura Shrine, which we still are in works with the Ura Shrine. It's gone private now, but I haven't actively investigated with him.
He interviewed recently with me, and he has some compelling video footage of this octagon hall, and there seems to be some type of a light, and he said that he's had people look at it, debunk it, try and see if it's headlights or anything like that. So it's a very haunted location. It just struck a chord with me. It was very familiar that that you mentioned that. So interesting.
Yes, we heard the piano. Although we were in the basement, we heard the piano playing upstairs on its own. So it is a haunted location. It's just sometimes they're souls. They're not zoo animals, and they don't perform.
Absolutely.
They're just so sometimes you're going to go into it. But we've gone to several places several times. One time it was quiet. The next time it's just off the chain, just absolutely insane. So It's very, very important to try to debunk things before you jump to the fact that it's paranormal immediately.
So what does responsible paranormal investigation look like to you?
A responsible paranormal. Okay, so I do believe that before you go in, this is how we do it. We like to come together as a team, and we like to go out and eat dinner. Get our thoughts out of our head, get our expectations out of our head, clear our minds a little bit over some good fellowship, over some good dinner together. And then when you go in, you just kind of have a sort of a game plan of, okay, this is how we're gonna conduct this. We're gonna start here, or we're gonna break up into groups. So you have a plan of action as far as, are you gonna start together or separate? How many floors are there? How do we need to break ourselves up so we are not polluting the evidence? So it's not like floor on top of floor. Right. So it might be the first floor, the third floor instead of first and second. So that kind of thing as well. Then you got to know who's going to be going over the evidence, who's going to be using what tools, that kind of thing. And then you do have to, and as much as people do not like to hear it, you have to, and I don't really like this word, but debunk. You have to be able to say, because when you go in, you got to listen to the building. You have to listen to the traffic, to the animals outside. You have to listen to all this before you start your investigation to gauge the atmosphere of the natural sounds of the atmosphere. Then after you do that, then you can proceed with your investigation. But that is a huge thing. You just got to know the sounds. So it might take 20, 30 minutes of just kind of hanging out and listening and being like, okay, I hear a train, it's come by twice, or just little things like that. You just got to, in your ears, kind of perk up to that thing, that sort of noise. Then once you're used to that, then you can proceed with your investigation. Then you can know, okay, the door opened because the windows are broken. There's plenty of places you go to that their windows are broken.
Right.
They have them boarded up, but there might be like an inch sliver. It might be really cold or windy outside, and there's 1 inch of a sliver of light, outside that you can see through. Well, the wind can get through that, and the wind can throw the door shut. We're open. So you also have to, so you've got to really look at the place before you start investigating.
Absolutely. So now let's talk equipment. What tools do you personally rely on the most?
The first tool is me.
Okay, all right.
Me as myself, because everybody, in my mind, everybody's born with the ability of some sort. Everybody has a gift. It's just, have you tapped into it or not? So my body is the first thing. I love EVPs because you can hear them. You can, if you can't hear them audibly with your own ears, you can hear them on that recorder, and that is mind-boggling to me, that you're listening to something that a spirit is saying and you can hear it.
Right.
That is the ultimate goal for me, to bridge that gap of communication, right? Because you're talking to somebody who no longer in our world exists in the physical form. So EVPs would be second. And then, I like the things that light up I don't like things that necessarily make a bunch of noise. You know, so REM pods are neat, but they're so loud, you know?
Right.
And when you're in the moment and you're in the dark, a big loud noise to me can be overwhelming. So I like the things that don't make sound, because then I know a sound. When I hear a sound, it's not like, unless it's a tool that I'm using upstairs and I need to be able to hear it upstairs, kind of thing. But in the room with me, I just like mag lights. So I would say myself, EVPs, and mag lights are my 3 top.
Okay. And which tools do you think are overused?
Oh boy.
Or we could go ineffective. Which ones do you think are overused or just ineffective, just garbage?
The SLS camera is a tricky one. That one you have to know what you're using, because a lot of SLS cameras can map out chairs and doorways and make it seem like something there when it's not. So unless you're sitting here saying, okay, we need to make sure that we're actually seeing you, can you raise your right hand? Okay, can you raise your left hand? Can you sit down? Can you stand up? We've done that before and it's worked.
Okay.
On demand. So, however, you have to know that the correct questions to ask to make sure that you're getting what you're getting. Make sure that you're not, I don't want to say making it up, but you're not confusing it with a door frame or a chair.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And then K2s can be really tricky also because of electrical. We were at the Ross house, and there was a K2 that kept going off. It was a K2 that kept going off, and come to find out there was wiring under the floor of this specific area. Now that house is very haunted. The Ross house is amazing and beautiful, and clean and very welcoming. But the K2s are real tricky because there is electrical wiring, and some of these places do have electricity. Now, if they say they don't have electricity, that's something completely different. You know, but if there is electricity, K2s, because you can't always see the wires behind the wall, you know?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, now let's talk evidence. What's the most compelling evidence you've personally captured or witnessed?
Well, my favorite piece of evidence I have ever gotten in my entire life was at South Pittsburgh Hospital.
Okay.
And it was the first time I was there, and I was in the kitchen, and I was taking pictures of the freezer, and I was standing back. If anybody's been to South Pittsburgh Hospital in the kitchen, you understand where the freezer is. And I was definitely standing way back, and I took a series of 3 pictures. 1, 2, 3. Because that's technically how you're supposed to do it. 1, 2, 3, right? So if you take a picture and something shows up in all 3 pictures, chances are it's not paranormal.
Right.
That is not what happened.
Okay.
I took a picture of the freezer. I took a picture and there's a little boy standing in the freezer. I took another picture and there's nothing there.
Wow. And
so, I mean, I've got it on a paperwork. I don't know, you probably can't even see that. No, there's no way you can be able to see that. But that was one of the best pieces of evidence, the pictures. And I love taking pictures. I have another one at Rugby. I was at the Newberry house with my sister and some friends. There were no children there at all. But I took a picture of the front of the house because it's very nostalgic looking, and it was very like Norman Rockwell looking. So I took this picture and didn't even pay attention until like a week later, and I look and there's a child standing in the doorway.
Oh, okay.
That was epic. And then at South Pittsburgh also, before Ronnie D took it over and really put his heart and soul into this place and brought light to positivity there was a goat man that was, we call him the goat man, but he had horns, and he had like the cloven foot, the cloven feet. It's actually, that's hanging up right there. I don't know if you can see on camera, but that's that picture right there. And then that one is the one at Rugby.
Wow.
They hang on my wall forever because those are some very astounding pictures to me.
So did you recognize it in the moment, or did you discover this after you had left the site?
After I had left the site.
Okay.
It was in the moment because I was taking pictures. The one of the little boy in the freezer, I was so in the moment, and it was my second investigation ever. The first was the Thomas house, and then I went to South Pittsburgh. And I got home later on, and the next day I started just filtering through my pictures because I take a blue million pictures. So I was like, well, I'm going to have to delete some of these because they're of nothing. And that's when I came across that, and my jaw dropped. I mean, I sent it to the owner of the company who hosted the event, and they were just like, you are kidding me. No, I've never seen anything like this before. It was epic proportions, I tell you. That's a very proud moment of mine.
No, absolutely. Honestly, some of the creepiest moments happen afterwards. You leave a location thinking nothing happened, and then during the evidence review, there is a voice, movement, something impossible. So, that's just pretty amazing. Has there ever been a moment during an investigation that genuinely unsettled you? Not excitement, not adrenaline, but like real discomfort where you were shaken.
Yes, at Missouri State Penitentiary. I went to the gas chamber. And, there's this giant cross outside of it. And so that giant cross was meant as a beacon of hope for those getting executed. Mm-hmm. But I stood out there, and I really felt extremely, and this has nothing really to do with, I mean, it is paranormal, but it wasn't an event, like there was no spirit that popped out or nothing like that, but the emotions that I got had me in tears, and I'm not a crier. Okay. I've only cried 2 or 3 times in an investigation.
Okay.
And this is one of them because I just felt the fear. Like I was the one going to the gas chamber, to where my friend had to look at me and say, it's okay, you can come in. And so I was like, okay. So I walked in, and it just overwhelmed me to where it wasn't like sobbing and boo-hooing. It was just tears were running out of my eyes. And that's very odd for me to experience something like that, because I'm not a crier.
Right.
I don't, especially in investigations. So that one really got me, and that's always stuck with me. That one, the gas chamber, I don't understand. I think it's because there were people that were executed that didn't need to be executed. They were wrongfully accused. Mm-hmm. And then not only were they in a gas chamber, they had to sit and stare at this gas chamber for the last 24 hours of their life. Right. They got housed for their last 24 hours. They went into that gas chamber, or into that gas chamber building, and there's 2 cells, and the cells sit there and look at the gas chamber. So that's your only view, is your pending doom. So for somebody who hadn't done anything, and because a lot of the people who were executed were African American, and it was really easy to put blame on people. It might be stealing a loaf of bread.
Right.
You're trying to feed your family, and now you're going to die. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So it's horrible. It's terrible. Yeah.
No. So do you think that paranormal investigators become desensitized over time?
Mm-hmm. I do. That's what I was saying about the cat ball. Because when you first start, you're just very excited at the even at the prospect of something being haunted, and just walking in, you get this electric buzz about you that's really exciting. And then over time, it becomes old hat, and you become desensitized to it. And that's something, I went through that phase to where it was like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this anymore, or maybe I'm losing my touch, or I'm not as excited as I used to be. But sorry, there's my dog. But yeah, I got myself out of that funk because I was talking to a friend, and this always gets me, and I'll talk about this to the day I die. Beth Moore and we used to work together at this paranormal event company, and we've become dear friends over the years that we've been together. And she and I have a friend who have passed away, who came to her after her passing, And she let Beth know that spirits see us for our auras, right? So we each have our own special aura. Not one person's the same color as the next. And if you go into a location clouded, and you're thinking about an argument you got in, somebody cut you off in traffic, some report you didn't get done for work when it should have been done, just anything, right? Anything of your day. And you walk into a location and you're clouded, that's messing with your aura. That's dulling your light. Therefore, they're not going to want to speak to you as much. Because spirits are going to go for the brightest colors. They're going to want to go for who they can identify with. Well, if you come in with a big rain cloud over your head, they're not going to want to talk to you. So that's something that I've always, she told me, she put into words what I was feeling, and she validated what I was feeling. And so that's something I always carry with me, because you do get jaded. You can go through a funk, even us lifers in the paranormal, and you got to find your way out of that. If you want to stay in the paranormal, you have to fight your way out of that, because it can take you down pretty quick.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more with Erin Hale. Stay tuned.
When the world goes quiet, the unknown speaks. Welcome to Unexplained Radio, your home for the paranormal, the mysterious, and the unexplained. From chilling ghost encounters to cryptids, UFOs, and the darkest corners of human experience. This is where real stories come alive, featuring a powerful lineup of shows, including the Unholy Podcast, bringing you raw, first-hand accounts from the edge of reality. Listen now at unexplained.radio.com, Unexplained Radio, where the truth is never what it seems, and the silence is never empty.
This episode of the Unholy Podcast and the Unholy Broadcast is proudly sponsored by Loreo Watches. In the shadows, time moves differently. Moments stretch. Silence lingers, and sometimes what waits in the darkness is watching. Through every investigation, every whispered encounter, and every unexplained moment, one thing remains constant: time. Loreo Watches blends timeless craftsmanship with bold sophistication, designed for those who understand that every second matters, especially when the unknown draws near. Elegant, precise, unmistakable. Whether you walk in daylight or chase mysteries after dark, wear the timepiece that commands attention. Loreo Watches, because even in the darkness, time never stops. Proud sponsor of the Unholy Podcast and the Unholy Broadcast.
First, there was the Unholy Silence, the terrifying, true memoir. Next, we brought you deeper into the mysteries of the paranormal with the Unholy Podcast. Now comes the Unholy Broadcast, a live radio show discussing the paranormal and listeners' true accounts of experiences with things that are unexplained. Unexplainedradio.com is where you'll find the broadcast. Visit authorDougOwen.com or unexplainedradio.com for more. Tune in, listen, watch the podcast, read the book, and beware the unholy. The experiences discussed on the Unholy Podcast are not fiction. They are drawn from lived events. Doug's first-hand account of a sustained haunting as documented in the book, The Unholy Silence. The book details the investigation, the psychological toll, and the impact on his family. offering a deeper look at what happens when paranormal events move beyond theory and into daily life. The Unholy Silence is available worldwide through Amazon in paperback, hardback, and ebook formats. For those who want the full account, the story begins there.
Is your business truly protected, or is it haunted by what you don't know? I'm Dawn Adams. With over 30 years of experience, I've seen it all. When I review a policy, I find that 75% of businesses have scary coverage gaps. Don't let those unexplained coverage gaps send your business to the graveyard. Cutting corners now could cost you everything later. Serving Idaho, Oregon, and Washington, call me direct at 208-955-6370. That's 208-955-6370. Or find me on Facebook at Dawn M. Adams, Farmers Insurance Agent.
From across the globe, where the unexplained refuses to stay buried, comes a network that doesn't just talk about the paranormal. It broadcasts it. Welcome to Paranormal UK Radio, streaming worldwide at paranormalukradio.com, bringing you an international lineup of voices from the edge of reality, featuring hit shows like the Unholy Podcast, hosted by author and paranormal investigator Doug Owen, alongside Seventh Sanctum with Carrie Ann and Natalie, The Paranormal Peep Show, Unknown Classic Origins Radio, Mac Maloney's Military, X-Files Fridays, Scary Eerie with Mark Manning, The High Strangeness Factor with Steve Ward, Andy Mercer, and Susie Bastille, 6 Degrees of John Keel, and Transdimensional Realities with Melissa Lee. This isn't just radio. It's a deep look at the paranormal. Tune in now at paranormalukradio.com and step into the unknown, because the truth is never silent.
Okay, welcome back to the Unholy Podcast. I'm your host, author and paranormal investigator, Doug Owen. So we're talking with Erin Hale, paranormal investigator. And now let's talk about team dynamics. Do you prefer investigating alone or with a team?
Well, I like having a team because these places that we go into may not only be haunted, they might have homeless people in them.
Okay.
Or they have some unsavory types lingering about. So it's nice to have backup. My team, I trust with my life. And I mean that literally. Okay. We all come from different dynamics. We all have different... I'm sorry, my dog is whining. We all have different, he's like I said, he's very vocal tonight, but we all come from different walks of life, different belief systems, but we gel together. Our energy works very well together. So if I want to go off alone, all I have to do is say, hey guys, I'm gonna go up over here, I'm gonna go over here by myself. Just, I just want to experience something on my own. And they'll be near to where if something happens, somebody can be there in a heartbeat. But they will leave enough distance between you and them to where you can just investigate on your own, which is nice. But at least you have backup. Yeah.
No, absolutely. So have you ever had another investigator panic during a case?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We've all, I think everybody on our team has at least had a moment, but there's one that's specific that's very, very funny.
Okay.
It's like we can be having a serious conversation and we can bring this up and we'll all be in tears laughing because it's we were at hospital on College Hill in West Virginia, and we were all upstairs on the 3rd floor, and a door had opened. And one investigator laughed at the rest of us. Audra laughed at the rest of us. But Bailey, one of our team members, he literally opened up his arms and he starts like ushering us all through the door. It was like a massive Scooby-Doo moment, right? He was like, no, and he like ushered us all through the door, and I don't know how we all fit through the door. There was like 6 of us, so I don't know how we all got shoved through the door and made it through, but we did. We did. But that was one of the funniest moments. And then also at the same hospital, we played hide and seek. We had a little bit of time to kill. We had the place for 2 nights.
Okay.
So we were like, what can we do? What can we do with our time that will make this fun, right? And something neat. So we were like, okay, we'll play hide and seek. So one person was seeking, the rest of us was hiding, and one person was the witness for the seeker. And they keep finding people, and then all of a sudden we had walkie-talkies on us, and we were messing with each other like, you know, you're never gonna find me, you know, kind of thing.
Right.
And all of a sudden Bailey comes over and he says, can you please get me out of the stairwell, we're locked in. Well, my response was, you're not getting me to give up my hiding spot. This is just a ploy so you can catch me, so no. I play very well, so no. And no, literally they locked themselves in a stairwell. So, so we all had to come out. It was like ollie oxen free, right? So we all had to come out. We all had a good laugh about it, but that was a little panic too, because that was funny. That was good.
Absolutely. So now I want to touch on something controversial. Provocation. Now, some investigators provoke entities, challenge them, mock them, demand responses. Where do you stand on provocation?
I don't like to mock. Mocking is a no-no for me anyway. I always use this as an example. If you're in a prison, you're not going to say please and thank you. Because they're in a prison, they don't behave like that in a prison. They don't say may I, you know, mother may I? They don't do that. Right. They're in prison. You know, or if you're at like an asylum, you can approach it, you can provoke them without being disrespectful. I'm okay with provoking because that's kind of what we're doing anyway. Right. Even if you're being polite, you're provoking for an answer. It's just the way you go about it. So as long as you keep your ego out of it and you're not rude to the extent of like shutting down communication. But sometimes you do have to provoke. You know, if you've got somebody that's picking on one of your team members that's really big and mean and, you know, a spirit type, you know, you're gonna stand up to them. Sure. And you're gonna get rowdy with them a little bit. But on the flip side, it's all where you are in the moment. But I do not believe in being disrespectful. So provoking to a point, yes. Disrespect, no, because you have no idea what you're dealing with. You might think that it's George who, you know, was in the Civil War and whatever, but you might be speaking to a demon. You don't know. We don't know. You know, so you don't know what you're up against. So you have to take caution in that thought process. You have to be careful with how far you push that provocation.
Do you think fear itself can intensify the experience?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you're already on edge and you're already a little fearful and something happens, I've seen it make people run out of a building. And it literally might just be a rat. You know? And I'm being serious. It might be a rat because some of the places that we all go into are not in the best condition. So, you know, yes, I do believe that can definitely happen.
And how do you keep frightened clients calm while still taking their experiences seriously?
It's all in your demeanor. It's all in your delivery. If you approach it calmly, they will feed off of your energy. If you come into like a house and you're just like, oh, this feels awful, and you're instantly just very up in arms about it, you are going to throw those people into a tizzy fit. You're going to scare the fire out of them. So you just want to make, you know, so she had already been amped up. And then on top of it, the TV shows and the over-sensationalizing of things that happen for TV purposes. So that has happened a lot. And you just have to be gentle. You have to make sure because we never want to make somebody feel bad or embarrassed that they thought they were living somewhere haunted and it turns out it wasn't. Right. The last thing we ever want to do is make somebody feel less than. Sure. That's definitely not what we do. So we approach that very carefully.
Sure. So let's broaden the conversation just a little. After everything that you've seen and experienced, what do you personally believe the paranormal actually is?
Oh my God, there's so many different theories I have. I do believe that there are spirits that are lost, that stay here and don't move on because of unsettled business, or they might have Alzheimer's and they passed away, not realizing that they passed away.
Sure.
You know, that kind of thing. But I also believe in timelines, that they can overlap. So have you ever seen the movie, it's got Nicole Kidman in it, The Others? That's what it's called, The Others.
Classic, yeah.
That kind of thing, right? And I can take it a step further as timelines. Like, what if we are talking to what we think is a spirit, and then they're talking to us thinking we're a spirit, but we're just on two different timelines, and they just happen to intersect in that moment?
Yeah, that came up interestingly in a conversation with Melissa Lee from Transdimensional Realities, and she had an incident that she reported where one of her team looked at a person dressed in 19th century clothing, and they both of their jaws dropped, and then the woman vanished. So it appeared that the woman on the other end was looking at an apparition as well, probably dressed in what they would consider space clothing, or futuristic clothing.
Exactly.
From that point.
She had pants on. Oh my gosh.
Right. Pockets, even pockets in a dress. Right. No. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's one of those things. So that in itself, I mean, those two things to me they're the most compelling for me. That somebody's lost, or they just haven't moved on because of unfinished business, which is really sad. I ran into a spirit at St. Albans, and this is going to sound strange, and I don't usually talk about this, but so he was showing me pictures in my mind, because this is how spirits can talk to me, and it's like a guessing game. They're not clear with me. Right. They'll just flash flashcard pictures in my mind. So then I get to put the story together, and then I sound like a crazy person. But this guy imagine being at a dinner table with an endless amount of relatives, like endless, and they're all trying to talk to you at the same time. This is what it felt like when he was in my mind. I accidentally took him home with me. He came with me. I didn't accidentally take him. He hitched a ride with me, home with me. And I thought, oh my God, I can't even think straight because this guy's still with me. It was very disorienting because it was just personality after personality after personality. And it was the most demented thing I'd ever been through. Well, I thought, okay, I'm going to have to I'm going to have to meditate, for lack of better words, and take him on an ethereal walk back to the asylum. I need to take him back there because I can't do this. Well, he ended up taking me on a walk, and he had told me, he apologized. He thought I was somebody I wasn't. He had explained to me that in his life, whether he did good or whether somebody did good for him or bad for him, he gave them a piece of his soul. And the only way he could move on is if he gathered all the pieces of his soul again. So he was looking for people who had pieces of his soul. And he thought, oh, why don't I start off with somebody I know? So I guess something about me emulated somebody he knew that did him right in the past. So he thought he felt safe coming to me to get a piece of his soul back. But I didn't know this guy. It was way before my time. And once he realized that, that's when he apologized. And so we took this ethereal walk. You can call it a dream state. You can say it was ethereal, whatever, back to the asylum. And that's when he left. And he turned around and he just said, I'm sorry. Because he was trying to get all the pieces of his soul back because he wants to move on, but he can't because of that.
Wow.
Yeah. That really got me because it was a really chaotic time. I mean, he stuck with me for 2-3 days after I came home. And so that was very disorienting, because having somebody else's thoughts in your mind is bad enough. But when they're like flashcards and they're just going and going and going and going and showing you all different kind of things that are very demented, it's a little too much. You know?
Absolutely. And interesting that you talk about flashcards, because before I let you go tonight, this is my favorite part of the show. We call it Unholy Fire.
Okay.
One word answers, no explanation, first word that pops in your mind.
Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Demon.
Okay. Horns.
Ghost.
Love.
Shadow figure.
Watching.
Possession. No? Fair enough.
Yeah, just me?
Yeah?
Maybe.
All right.
Maybe.
Exorcism.
Intriguing.
Haunted doll.
Possible.
Ouija boards.
Beautiful.
EVP.
Classic.
Cryptid.
Mysterious.
Bigfoot.
I want to touch. I just want to touch them.
Okay. All right. Alien.
Yep. Intriguing.
Attachment.
All the time. Oh, that's 3 words.
No, that's good. No, that's good.
Okay. Okay.
Poltergeist.
Teenagers.
Hell.
Here.
Skeptic.
Learning.
And death.
It's 1 word?
Death. Yeah.
You said?
Death. Yeah.
Beginning.
Okay. All right. Well done. Most guests try to cheat during the Unholy Fire, so you survived. So.
Oh, great.
Yeah, good job. So now, Erin, before we wrap up, where can listeners find you online? Where can they follow your investigations?
The best place is Facebook. Facebook, I've dropped the ball on our YouTube channel.
Okay.
So Facebook is the best place, or TikTok, and it's all under Tennessee Shadow Chasers, or my personal page, which is Erin Hale.
Okay. And any upcoming projects or appearances you'd like people to know about?
Yes, we have a project coming up, and it's the Smoky Shadows Retreat at the Ura Shrine, which is a very interesting place. It's by invite only, so if you want to know more about this, reach out to me on Facebook or the Tennessee Shadow Chasers on Facebook. Shoot me a message. I'll give you some information, and I'll get you on the list.
Terrific. That's fantastic. So thank you so much for joining me tonight on the Unholy Podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Absolutely. And to all our listeners and watchers around the world, thank you for spending your time with us once again in the shadows. So as I always say, dear listeners, dear viewers, until next time, stay safe, be aware, and beware, because sometimes the silence is the most terrifying thing.
You've just heard another chilling chapter of the Unholy Podcast, hosted by Doug Owen, author, investigator, and witness to the things most fear to name. For more real stories, cursed objects, and exclusive content, step deeper into the dark at authorDougOwen.com. Subscribe, share, and remember, some silences aren't empty, they're waiting.